Sunday dinner jitters. The scent of roasting chicken hit John as Sarah opened the door, a comforting wave against the churn in his stomach. "You made it," she chirped, pulling him inside. Her hand, warm and reassuring, squeezed his as she led him toward the dining room. Carol stood by the table, setting down a steaming bowl of mashed potatoes. "John," she acknowledged, her smile a touch too wide, a glint in her blue eyes that made him vaguely uneasy. "Glad you could join us." The dining room was bright, sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The table was set impeccably with linen napkins and gleaming silverware, a stark contrast to his own cluttered apartment. He swallowed, feeling a fresh surge of nervousness. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Sarah's father, a quiet man with kind eyes, asked about his job. Sarah recounted a funny incident from her work. The conversation flowed easily, a gentle stream that lulled him into a sense of calm. The chicken was succulent, the vegetables perfectly roasted, the mashed potatoes creamy and rich. He even managed to crack a joke that elicited a genuine laugh from Sarah's father. Then Carol spoke, her voice cutting through the comfortable hum. "So, John," she said, leaning forward, her gaze intense. "It's getting late. You know, we have plenty of room. You could always stay the night." John nearly choked on a bite of green bean. He looked at Sarah, whose cheeks had flushed a delicate pink. Her father cleared his throat, his eyes fixed on his plate. The air in the room thickened, the previously relaxed atmosphere replaced by a palpable tension. "Oh, Mom!" Sarah exclaimed, a hint of exasperation in her voice. Carol simply smiled, unfazed. "Well, I just thought it might be easier than driving all the way back." Her eyes held John's, an unreadable expression lurking within their depths. "Besides," she added, her voice dropping to a suggestive murmur, "there's an empty place in my matrimonial bed." John's mind stalled. He fumbled with his fork, the clatter echoing loudly in the sudden silence. He opened his mouth to speak, to formulate some sort of polite refusal, but the words caught in his throat. The room seemed to spin, the aroma of roasted chicken now cloying and suffocating. All he could manage was a weak, uncertain smile. The lingering glance. Sarah choked back a laugh, swatting her mother playfully on the arm. "Mom! Don't be ridiculous. John's driving home. We have plans tomorrow, remember?" She deftly changed the subject, asking about Carol's book club, the bright smile never faltering. John, however, couldn't shake the image of Carol's eyes. He caught her gaze lingering on him, a beat too long, as Sarah spoke. It wasn't lecherous, not exactly, but something unsettling flickered within its depths. A flicker of genuine interest, perhaps, masked by a playful smirk. He shifted uncomfortably on the floral sofa, the springs groaning in protest. The scent of lilies, usually a calming presence in Sarah's home, now felt cloying, thick in the air. He cleared his throat, offering a weak smile to Carol. She returned it, her lips curving in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. Later, as they were getting ready to leave, Emily, Sarah's younger sister, sidled up to him, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "So, John," she drawled, leaning against the doorframe, "Mom's really putting the moves on, huh? You looked like you were about to melt into the cushions." John felt a blush creep up his neck. "Don't be silly, Emily. Your mom was just joking around." He tried to sound nonchalant, but his voice cracked slightly. Emily giggled, pushing off the doorframe. "Sure, John, sure. Just remember, if things get too intense, you have my number." She winked, disappearing down the hallway, leaving John flustered and Sarah oblivious, humming as she searched for her keys. The air felt thick, charged with unspoken possibilities, a low hum beneath the surface of polite conversation. He couldn't wait to escape the house, to breathe the cool night air and shake off the unsettling feeling that had settled in his stomach. He definitely would not be staying over any time soon. Subtle flirtations. The aroma of rosemary and roasting chicken filled the dining room. John nervously adjusted his tie, the knot suddenly feeling too tight. He'd made an effort, hoping to impress Sarah's parents, but under Carol's watchful gaze, he felt like a specimen under a microscope. "John, you have such lovely manners," Carol purred, her eyes lingering a moment too long. "It's refreshing to see a young man who understands the importance of etiquette." He mumbled a thank you, acutely aware of his clumsy attempt to cut the chicken without sending it flying across the table. Sarah, engrossed in a story about a mishap at the university library, seemed oblivious. "And that jacket," Carol continued, her voice a velvet caress. "The color really suits you. It brings out the blue in your eyes." John's face flushed. He hadn't expected this level of attention. He stammered, "Oh, thanks. It's old." Carol chuckled, a low, throaty sound that vibrated in the air. "Old is often best, John. Like a fine wine, some things only improve with age." She winked, and John felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. He risked a glance at Sarah, who was now animatedly discussing the library's new coffee machine with her father. The clinking of silverware and the murmur of their conversation served as a bizarre soundtrack to Carol's increasingly blatant flirtations. He cleared his throat, trying to regain some semblance of composure. He needed to steer the conversation back to safe territory, away from the treacherous waters of Carol's compliments. He was increasingly uncomfortable. "So, Mr. Evans," he began, addressing Sarah's father, "Sarah tells me you're a keen gardener," but Carol cut him off smoothly. "Oh, John, don't be so formal. Call him David, darling. We're practically family now, aren't we?" The word "darling" hung in the air, thick with unspoken implications. John's appetite vanished. He pushed the chicken around his plate, his stomach churning with a mixture of anxiety and a growing, unsettling awareness. This was going to be a long evening. Game night gambit. Movie night. Sarah suggested, already scrolling through streaming services on the television. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the late afternoon sun, dust motes dancing in the golden shafts. John, perched on the edge of the floral sofa, felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. He'd been hoping for something quieter. "Oh, come on," Carol drawled, rising from her sprawled position on the floor. "Movies are so passive. Let's do something interactive. How about a board game?" Her eyes, the same striking blue as her mother's, fixed on John. "Something with partners." A collective groan rippled through the room, mostly from Sarah and her younger sister, Emily. "Ugh, Carol, no one wants to play Monopoly for 6 hours, Emily whined. Carol waved a dismissive hand. "Not Monopoly. I was thinking more, strategic. Something requiring teamwork." She rummaged through a cabinet overflowing with games, pulling out a box with an elaborate, medieval-looking cover. "Kingsburg. It's all about resource management and defending your territory." Sarah, ever the pragmatist, sighed. "Fine, but I get to pick the teams." Carol's smile didn't waver. "Actually," she said, her voice silk smooth, "I think it's best if we draw names. Completely random. Keeps things fair." She produced a small bowl and some slips of paper, already writing names on them. John watched her, a growing sense of being manipulated prickling his skin. The air in the room felt thick, charged with unspoken intentions. As the names were drawn, Carol made a show of protesting when she was paired with Emily. "Oh, bummer. I was really hoping to team up with someone, strategically minded." She glanced at John, a fleeting, suggestive smile playing on her lips. Then, with a feigned sigh, she announced, "Okay, new plan. Emily, you and Sarah team up. John, looks like you're stuck with me." The knot in John's stomach tightened. He could feel Sarah's gaze on him, sharp and questioning. The scent of Carol's perfume, a heady mix of vanilla and something sharper, almost metallic, filled his nostrils as she settled beside him, her thigh brushing against his. The game hadn't even started, and already John felt like he was losing. Unwanted touches. The Scrabble tiles rattled as Carol shook the bag, her bracelets jangling like wind chimes. "All right, lover boy," she said, her voice thick with playful innuendo, "let's see what words of wisdom you can conjure up tonight." She winked, and John felt a flush creep up his neck. He grabbed 7 tiles, avoiding her gaze. He focused on the letters, A, E, G, I, N, R, T, a decent hand, but nothing spectacular leaped out. Carol, however, was already laying down jazz on a triple word score. "Boom," she declared, clapping her hands. John pondered his tiles, trying to ignore the way Carol leaned closer, ostensibly to observe his rack. Her arm brushed his, a deliberate, lingering touch that sent a shiver down his spine. "Oh, excuse me," she purred, not sounding remotely apologetic. He mumbled a noncommittal response, his concentration shattered. Emily, seated across from them, caught his eye. A flicker of amusement danced in her gaze, mixed with something akin to pity. She knew. She knew exactly what Carol was doing, and the history behind it. He finally managed to cobble together train, placing it awkwardly on the board. Carol feigned disappointment. "Is that all you've got, Johnny? I thought you were supposed to be the wordsmith." She chuckled, a low, throaty sound. "Maybe I need to give you some private tutoring." His ears burned. He risked another glance at Emily, who raised an eyebrow, a silent question hanging in the air, "Are you all right?" He offered a weak smile, trying to convey that he was, even though every nerve in his body screamed otherwise. The game, once a pleasant distraction, had become a minefield of unwanted touches and suggestive remarks. He just wanted it to be over. He wanted to be anywhere but here, trapped in this increasingly uncomfortable game with Carol's predatory gaze fixed on him. Alone time. Sarah stretched, a theatrical yawn escaping her lips. "Right, I am absolutely shattered. Long day at the stables." She kissed John quickly on the cheek, then turned to her mother and sister. "Night, you two. Don't keep him up too late, Mom." With a final, sleepy smile, she padded off towards the stairs, the floorboards creaking softly under her weight. John watched her go, a flicker of hope dying as she disappeared from view. The silence that descended was thick, almost tangible. Carol cleared her throat, the sound amplified in the sudden quiet. "So, John," she began, her voice low and melodious, "now that Sarah's gone to bed, Emily, perched on the arm of the sofa, picked up the thread. We thought it might be nice to have a little chat. Just the 3 of us." She leaned forward, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulder. "Get to know each other better." John swallowed hard. The air in the room felt suddenly heavy, charged with an energy he couldn't quite decipher. He glanced nervously at the doorway, as if expecting Sarah to reappear and rescue him from this increasingly uncomfortable situation. "A chat," he repeated weakly, his voice barely a whisper. Carol rose from her armchair, her movements graceful and deliberate. She walked towards the fireplace, her figure outlined by the soft glow of the embers. "Yes, John. A friendly chat. Perhaps with a little nightcap. I'm sure we can find something suitable." She turned back to face him, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "Unless you're too tired, of course." He wasn't tired. He was terrified. Trapped. Each carefully chosen word, each subtle gesture, felt like a tightening noose. He had to get out of here. But how? "No, no, I'm not tired," he stammered, the words tumbling out in a rush. "But, perhaps it's getting late. And I should probably," he trailed off, his voice lost in the expectant silence. Emily giggled, a high-pitched sound that grated on his nerves. "Nonsense, John. The night is young. A lonely heart." The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine. Carol refilled their wine glasses, the clinking of glass against glass echoing in the sudden quiet. She took a sip, her gaze lingering on John a moment too long before she spoke. "You know," she began, her voice lower than usual, "it's funny the things you miss after everything fell apart." She swirled the wine in her glass, the ruby liquid catching the light. "It's not the big things, not always. It's the small routines. Sharing a newspaper in the morning, having someone to complain to about the traffic, knowing someone's waiting for you at home." John shifted uncomfortably on the plush sofa, the velvet suddenly feeling scratchy against his skin. He took a large gulp of his wine, the dry Cabernet doing little to ease the growing unease in his stomach. He knew where this was going, and he didn't like it one bit. "The house feels so empty, John," Carol continued, her eyes glistening slightly. "Especially on nights like this. It's funny, isn't it? A big house, full of beautiful things, but utterly empty." She placed her hand on his forearm, her touch lingering, sending a jolt through him. "Sometimes, I just wish there was someone to share it with. Someone to talk to, someone to just be there." He could feel the weight of her gaze, the unspoken implication hanging heavy in the air. He glanced towards the hallway, towards the potential escape route, but the door seemed miles away. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat. He felt like a deer caught in headlights, paralyzed by the intensity of her stare. The air in the room crackled with unspoken desires and burgeoning awkwardness. He wanted to shrink, to disappear into the cushions, to be anywhere but here, trapped in this increasingly uncomfortable dance. Escape route. John felt Carol's hand linger on his arm a beat too long as she refilled his wine glass. "You're such a dear, John," she purred, her voice thick with the Pinot Grigio she'd been steadily consuming. "Sarah's lucky to have you." He shifted uncomfortably. The floral scent of her perfume, usually pleasant, now felt cloying. "I'm lucky to have her, Carol. She's everything to me." He hoped the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. He hated hurting Carol, but the undercurrent of her attention had become impossible to ignore. Carol's smile tightened, the corners of her mouth dipping ever so slightly. "Everything, huh? At your age, everything changes. Sarah's a sweet girl, but," she trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air like the smoke from the fire Emily had built in the hearth. He forced himself to meet her gaze, steeling his resolve. "Sarah is my everything. Now and, I hope, always." The air crackled with unspoken tension. Carol's eyes, usually bright and playful, now held a glint of something akin to frustration. She opened her mouth to speak, but Emily, bless her, chose that precise moment to launch herself into the conversation. "So, John," Emily chirped, grabbing a handful of popcorn from the bowl on the coffee table, "did you ever manage to fix that leaky faucet you were telling us about?" Sarah was complaining about the dripping keeping her awake. The shift in topic was so abrupt it was almost comical, but John welcomed it like a lifeline. "Almost. I just need to pick up a new washer from the hardware store. It's been driving me crazy too." He launched into a detailed description of the plumbing problem, grateful for the mundane distraction. Carol, her face a mask of polite disinterest, poured herself another glass of wine. The fire popped and hissed, casting flickering shadows on the walls, momentarily obscuring the disappointment etched on her face. He could feel her gaze on him still, but at least, for now, the escape route had been secured. The morning after. The sunlight sliced through the gap in Sarah's curtains, painting a stripe across her face. John watched her sleep, the gentle rise and fall of her chest a calming rhythm. He dreaded waking her, but the knot in his stomach tightened with each passing minute. He needed to talk about Carol. Finally, he nudged her gently. "Sarah," he whispered, "wake up." She groaned, turning towards him, her eyes fluttering open. "Morning," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "Hey," he said softly, kissing her forehead. "Can we talk for a minute?" About last night? Her brow furrowed. About what? Did I say something weird in my sleep again? He chuckled weakly. No, it's about your mom. Sarah sat up, pulling the covers around her. The sunlight now illuminated the apprehension in her eyes. What about her? Did she embarrass me again? He chose his words carefully. She made a few comments that made me uncomfortable. About me staying the night. About your dad. He avoided the specifics, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Sarah's initial reaction was disbelief. Mom. No way. She's quirky, but she wouldn't. She trailed off, her expression clouding over. Wait. What exactly did she say? He recounted the gist of the previous night's exchange, carefully omitting the most suggestive details. As he spoke, Sarah's face flushed crimson. Oh, God, she groaned, burying her face in her hands. I am so sorry, John. She does this sometimes. Especially since Dad. She paused, searching for the right words, left. She gets lonely. And inappropriate. John reached out, taking her hand. It's okay. I understand. But it made me feel weird, Sarah. Like she doesn't respect our relationship. Sarah squeezed his hand. You're right. It's not okay. I need to talk to her. We need to set some boundaries. She looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. She can't keep doing this. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. He smiled, relief washing over him. Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. Of course, she said, leaning in to kiss him. We're a team, right? We deal with crazy moms together.